Hi, this is Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of The Contrarian. I am delighted to have with me two attorneys general. One, Matt Platkin from the great state of New Jersey. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
And Keith Ellison from the great state of Minnesota. Keith, good to see you again.
Glad to be here, Jennifer.
Well, yesterday, the president issued, we don't really like to call them executive orders because an order suggests that it has legitimacy and that it has the force of law. But he issued a executive spasm yesterday purporting to tell the states that they have to do things like require passports in order to allow people to vote, defunding elections, a whole slew of measures. Why don't we start with you, Matt? What was your reaction when you saw the executive order? And is this legal?
I think my first reaction was, don't they ever get tired of doing illegal and unconstitutional things? But no, this is alarming. And it's a series, it's the latest in a series of alarming, blatantly unconstitutional, blatantly illegal acts that are designed to hurt states and hurt our residents and frankly create fear around the most fundamental right, which is the right to vote. So clearly, this is not going to hold up in court, and they know that, but yet they do it anyway. And they've done that from day one, rewriting birthright citizenship, freezing trillions of dollars in spending, gutting Medicaid, gutting the Department of Education, and now trying to eliminate the Department of Education, illegally stealing people's private information through the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, and now threatening in an unprecedented way states' ability to administer elections. And so, I think everyone should be alarmed about this. It goes to the core of our democratic institutions, the right to vote and the right to have free and fair elections, not dictated illegally by a president. And so we are clearly going to stand up to this and fight it. But, this is just the latest action by this administration that shows an utter disregard for the rule of law.
Right. Keith, one of the things it purports to do is something that they tried before in 2017 when they set up this phony election fraud commission, and that is to demand access to voting rolls and all sorts of information. Then even Republicans pushed back. What do you think about that specific part? And do you expect this time red state governors just to roll over and give them whatever they want?
Well, it didn't work last time. I don't think it's going to work this time. We're not going to cooperate. We will push back on it. As for red states, look, I hope they remember that they have some sovereign authority as states. I mean, we have a 10th Amendment. They have the right to run their state within certain guidelines the way they see fit. And I hope they stand on that. I mean, look, the whole Constitution is premised on people who have power jealously clinging to it. The House Republicans have collapsed. I hope the red state attorneys generals and governors do not. But I mean, I just want to say though, Jennifer, I agree with Matt. I think this is what this is really sort of about is they're now sort of recognizing that between the intelligence failures where they blame Jeff Goldberg, where the measles, the plane crashes, the inflation, the uncertainty around tariffs, and on, switching sides in the Ukraine-Russia conflict, all the craziness that they're doing, they know that they're setting themselves up for a bad day on election day, and they want to. And this is designed to make sure that they don't. That's what I think this is all about. It's sort of an admission of how unpopular what they're doing is, and the consequences that there will be at the election polls. And so they're trying to avoid that reality. So I don't think it's going to work. So let's give them, so let's keep fighting.
You know who agrees with you is my partner over here, Norm Eisen, who says they keep losing, and so they keep doing this kind of stuff. Matt, what are some of the other lawsuits that you and other states' attorneys general are involved in right now? I know birthright citizenship is one. Why don't you tell us about that and any others that you're involved in and where those stand right now?
Sure. And I just want to echo one thing,
Sure.
and I think I speak for all of us. We take election fraud seriously. I've prosecuted election fraud. It For this administration to come out and claim there is widespread fraud as a way of disenfranchising voters when one of the first acts of the administration was to pardon 1,500 January 6 people who denied the election and ended up with an officer who's from my state getting killed, I find to be incredibly hypocritical and almost laughably ridiculous. But it's part of, again, as I said before, a series of unlawful actions that we have challenged, Keith, me, and the other 21 of us in the delegation. I wish it was a bipartisan thing, because when you illegally gut university systems, as they did through the NIH
Right.
administrative cap order, which, by the way, who went to the polls in November to reduce administrative fees through NIH grants? I don't think that was top of mind for people, but it's a way of controlling the university systems and getting them to stop being places of free thought and free expression. It would gut universities in every state, in my state and in red states. Senator Katie Britt said it. So we sued, we got relief. $3 trillion in spending in the OMB directive, the second week of the administration, frozen overnight. I mentioned it, Medicaid, Head Start. I received notice that the drug cartel task force that we participate in, the thing that helps prosecute drug traffickers that I think this administration cares about, I received direct notice that it was frozen. So we sued, we got a temporary restraining order and now a preliminary injunction. And we have gone multiple times back to court to make sure that order is adhered to, and it has been. Birthright citizenship, there are multiple preliminary injunctions in place. They've actually gone to the Supreme Court, which is, I think, laughable, saying that it shouldn't be a nationwide injunction, that your citizenship status as a baby born in America should be determined on whether or not a state attorney general joined our suit. Never before has a federal government made that argument. Never before has the federal government tried to rewrite the 14th Amendment with an executive order, let alone argue to the Supreme Court that citizenship should be based on the partisan background of your state attorney general. So the Supreme Court, I think, appropriately has given that the back of the hand, and we'll dismiss it. Department of Education, we are in court. We've sought a preliminary injunction there for the illegal acts, first to gut 50% of the employees fired, then an executive order unlawfully trying to eliminate, something Ronald Reagan tried to do. And even he recognized you have to go to Congress, which of course doesn't want to do that because it's deeply unpopular, particularly for kids with special needs. DOJ, we have a preliminary injunction in place with respect to private data. In our case, Norm has had his own tremendous success in the appointments clause case that was challenged. And so I could go on, and we could spend an hour, frankly, talking about the status of our cases, because there have been so many of them. And here's the thing that people should know. We are batting 1,000. And we are batting 1,000 for a reason. We haven't lost for a reason, because this administration isn't doing things that are illegal on the margins. They're doing things that are facially so blatantly illegal that courts across the country, including judges appointed by President Trump, including the Supreme Court, has said, do not even come close to complying with the law and the Constitution, and put residents of our country in immediate harm, that they have to stop them. That's all these courts have done. They're not the ones acting crazy. It's the administration that is acting in a reckless and dangerous fashion, which is why courts have had to step in a way that they are constitutionally designed to do.
Keith, that's a perfect segue to the issue that now that we have seen both Republican and Democratic appointed judges rule against the administration, there is now a movement afoot that they're going to try to impeach judges or defund courts. Can you comment a little bit on that and the complete disdain this administration is showing towards a co-equal third branch, which is Article 3, the judiciary?
Well, let me say Democratic governments don't act that way. I mean, this is a very clear sign of an autocratic, dictatorial head of state. Doesn't like an independent judiciary, which is written into the Constitution, and therefore starts attacking it. I would say the examples you mentioned, Jennifer, are absolutely right. but let's fold into that the attacks on the right to counsel itself.
Yes.
Perkins Coie, Paul Weiss, all these things are saying, you can't have the lawyer you want because I don't like you. And we're going to attack the lawyers themselves. This is an attack on American democracy. And so, yeah, we have a separation of powers. We have a co-equal branch of government under attack by the executive, and we simply can't stand for it. And we have to stand up. And I'll just say this. Um, John Roberts is not my idea of some sort of a liberal activist judge. This guy is pretty conservative, always has been. He's an icon in the Federalist Society. And what does it mean if he has to take the public airwaves to rebuke the president of the United States and remind the president that it is not impeachment, but appeal, which is the right procedure if you don't like an outcome? Well, of course, Trump doesn't like that because he just wants his way and he doesn't care what the process is. You just do it my way. But it bodes very, very ill for the democracy. And this is why we have to stand up. And, me and Matt have a colleague, we call her affectionately Tish, but Letitia James. And she's very fond of saying, brains and smarts important now, but courage is more important.
Absolutely.
We've got to stick together and stick up for the rule of law and our independent judiciary and the right to counsel.
Absolutely. Matt, talk a minute about the real life impact that some of these cuts have or could have. For example, on Medicaid, they're contemplating $880 billion in cuts. You don't get that through fraud, waste, and abuse, of which there is very little. What is the potential impact on New Jersey residents from these sorts of cuts?
Well, it'd be devastating. And I think we saw a glimpse of it, like I said, the second week of the administration when they tried to freeze Medicaid, in fact, did freeze Medicaid. So notwithstanding what their public statements said, 50 states in America had their Medicaid portals frozen for 24 hours. And what happened, and Keith, me, and offices across the country started getting calls from people who said, wait a second, I have a doctor's appointment. Is my Medicaid card going to be accepted? My parents are in a nursing home. Are they going to be thrown out in the street? It's February. It's cold. Is my law enforcement funding that's coming in? Are we going to have to lay off cops? Head Start programs. I got to take my kids to school. Are they going to have anywhere to go tomorrow? What do I do when I go to work? These are actual questions that I have experienced or I've heard from residents in my state and that we have heard from residents across the country. And Keith hosted an amazing town hall last week. We heard from people, well over 1,000 people came. We heard from people across his state who were being hurt, including a veteran, multiple veterans, frankly, but one in particular who twice was the victim of an IED attack overseas, who had traumatic brain injury, who had a job at the VA, who showed up to work one morning in February, and she brought the Post-it note with her, and it was so ridiculous that I almost wouldn't have believed it if I didn't see it with my own eyes, that said, on the Post-it note, "You're fired by DOJ for poor performance," despite the fact that she had had exemplary reviews as recently as a month or two before her termination. She left her office that day, drove and contemplated, somebody who suffered from PTSD, contemplated jumping off a bridge. And instead of doing that, she drove to the VA and checked herself in to count inpatient counseling. And thank God she did not jump. This is a veteran of the United States military. And that's how the so-called Department of Government Efficiency is treating her. They're treating her like waste. And we've heard these stories. These impacts are real. And that's why I think you're seeing people wake up. Because the rule of law, I admit, is an abstract concept. And in the campaign, maybe it felt abstract to people. Well, it's not abstract if you don't know if your Medicaid card is going to work. It's not abstract if you don't know your kids are going to have school, say as a parent of 2 kids. It's not abstract if you're a veteran who feels like after serving this country, they're kicking you to the street with no safety net. And that's the story people need to understand, because this is going to be a fight in the courtroom, and we are winning, no question. There's never been a more successful series of lawsuits. But the American public needs to wake up and be concerned about what is happening to our country, to our democracy, and how they are being hurt by an erosion of the rule of law.
Keith, as we reach the end of our time, I do want to talk about the town hall and kind of the atmosphere that you're seeing. We keep reading that Democrats are despondent, they've given up, they are paralyzed. Is that what you're seeing, or are you seeing a ratcheting up of the anger, of the desire to be involved, to respond to these serial assaults on not only the law, but their livelihood and their very lives?
We're seeing a surge in activism. People are exerting their citizenship rights under the First Amendment. People are showing up to redress grievances, expressing themselves. They're assembling and they're speaking out loud. And I can tell you that Matt and I have a wonderful colleague named Chris Mays, and we had an event in Phoenix. That was our first event. We had a great turnout. And people showed up and, they told their stories and we listened to those stories. And then we went to Minneapolis and pretty soon we're going to go to Oregon and then we're going to go to Colorado. And then we're talking about doing some things in the mid-Atlantic region. And, Matt and I have been in conversation and we're thinking we're going to have one in New York and we're going to be all over the country because people really, really want this. They're showing up, they're sharing their stories. And we just want to tell people, look, you're not alone. You're not by yourself. People do care, and you do have some AGs who are here to fight back, and not just AGs. Hats off to Norm Eisen. Hats off to the ACLU and many other groups that have stepped up to take action on behalf of people, including our labor community. And so that we are seeing folks running to the battle stations, if you will, to make sure we protect. And I'll even say, AOC and Bernie Sanders yanking down, thousands of people. That's important. And even Congress really is starting to get moving in a way that the people expect them to. So I'm actually optimistic about the reaction of the public, and I think that's what accounts for this insane anti-voting executive spasm, as you use. I like your term better. Yeah.
So if people want to go to one of your town halls, is there a website? Is there a place they can go to get a schedule, to get information? What is that, Keith?
Yeah, I think they should just go to the DACA website, Democratic Attorney General's Association. They can check it out there. They should keep their eye on Blue Sky. They should keep their eye on different social media platforms. We are going to be announcing these things. And by the way, when we all do our individual town halls on our own as the AG of our state, but this thing that Matt and I are talking about is 4 or 5 AGs coming together and listening. And it's important. Somebody asked me, well, why would you leave your own state? I said, well, because these problems are happening all over the country. This is a shared harm. And
Absolutely.
and what affects one affects a lot of others. So that's where people should look. Go to the Democratic Attorney General's Association website and get involved. And this is the time for people who care about this country to get busy and move out. And thank you for doing this broadcast.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I think you're exactly right. The administration has operated on divide and conquer. They'll go after one law firm, they'll go after one state. And it's only if we come together and push back that we're going to get anywhere. Matt and Keith, it's such a pleasure to talk to you and to hear about your efforts. Kudos to you both. We'll have you back again. And I love hearing about the individual stories, the experiences you're having. We got to make this real for the American people. So thanks for what you're doing and thanks for joining us. We'll see you again soon.